How you doing? We're back with a little update on the tr3's rear section, which is where the tail panel and all the gussets fit in. I'm just going to show you a few things that I figured out on this build that really, if you don't understand it, and you end up in the end with problems, basically. So I'm going to show you a few things I found out with a couple panels that I used. Most of these panels came from the UK. There's one in particular that we're going to talk about. All right, so let's check it out. First thing I'm going to start out with is this trunk floor, which is actually a tire well, they call it. If you look in there, it doesn't fit the old tire well. So all the way around, I have a clamp on this in the back, and if I let that loose, this will shoot over towards me probably about an inch. So the way this structure was built, it was built crooked. But to start off with, this is your tire well area back here, which consists of this line, and the sides. This goes on to the tail panel. What happened here is when they built this, they used two pieces. So they stamped this, and then they came in with a second part. Now, if you look right there at that flange, you can see the edge right there. That's the bottom part, and the edge right there is the top. They filled this gap in. If they would have pushed this down and mated the two parts tight, I wouldn't have a height problem there in the corner. As you can see how it goes up. The other side is exactly the same. They did the same thing there. They welded the panel in and filled it. That's a filler. If they would have shut this gap, it would have took care of a problem that I have with height. Not only do I have a problem with height on two corners, I have a problem with width from here to here. These parts on the back end of this car, if I was to go ahead and set everything up and weld this all together, there's multiple things that come into play. Number one, that hole goes inside of the back of this tail panel. I'll take this part off, which is the cover, and that hole welds to the inside edge of this. So that hole in the back has to fit the inside of this hole for me to mate the tail panel to the floor panel and to the lower tire well. So if you look, there's a big gap right there, kind of goes away. I believe that will smash down because I measured this height here and these are the same, so this piece should meet good. What they didn't do is they didn't flange the ends up to go inward to fit that hole. So basically the hole is about a 1/4 inch, maybe a 1/2 inch too big. Now I can run the flange tool on this, which will bring it all down and make it go in, but I don't think that that's gonna pull it off. I don't think the flanger will step that down far enough. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this, and I'm gonna pull this corner down, and then in the center, I'm gonna try to roll that up and make that fit the way it's supposed to fit, because this part should lay really smooth on the top of this, which meets on these, okay? So we put new patches on both sides. I haven't ground nothing yet, but as you can see, we put new patches because it's a structural part. And on top of that, it holds the rear body mount, which goes like that. So all these things come into play. There's also a measurement you need from this point right here, which is the back top corner, to the lower corner here, where the quarter panel is. Because you can take this section and move it back and forth. All these bolt holes have to be mated to that quarter panel before you can weld this up, this area here, because this can move, which in turn moves that, which in turn pushes that out and back. So all these little spots here have to be right to where that tail panel will slide right on the back end. Now I did redo the corner of this. Last time you guys looked at it, it was all 8 and out. I fabricated a little patch to go around there to match the other side. I believe they're the same. And also, on the tail panel, I was doing some measurements, which any aftermarket parts, you really need to measure. You need to measure distance, width, what size the part is, because what happens is when they make these parts, they overlay on another part, and which gives it a bigger, it's not a lot, but when it comes to putting it on a car, it is. It makes it larger because they're doing it like an overlay. And some aftermarket bumper covers are made like that. So anyways, I measured this thickness right here, which is 1 inch. And then I went over and I measured this one over here because I was looking at them, and I have a real good eye for that kind of stuff. And I was looking at them, and this one here is thicker. This is 1.25 inches. Oh, we're going up here to the top. This is 1.25 inches. We'll get back to that flange because that's another one. This here is 1.25 inches. Sorry about that, but anyways, this will not fit in the gusset in the quarter panel if it's thicker. You know, it fits in that spot right there. I don't have enough room, no 1/4 inch, because this is one, that's 1.25 to fit it in that channel. So what I think I'm going to do is take the existing tail panel the rest of the way off, and I'm going to leave this in here. If you do cut this apart, you need to take measurements from the end of that gusset to the other one, which I took 36.25. And so when you cut this apart, those quarter panels are going to move out. The sides will go out there, and the side will go out there. So make sure you get that measurement, and also measure between and get a center measurement for your striker. Okay, 21.5 is what I came up. That's dead center in the back end after everything's put back. So anyways, when I was looking at the flanging, which I just showed you, another thing which shrunk this hole, this flange here is thicker than the flange on this one. This flange isn't that thick. That one is way thicker. I might have to, in the end, make slices here and roll this lip and then cut off the excess to make this fit that hole. Because I'm feeling that not only is that pan built too big, this lip that goes around this edge that accommodates that rear tire floor is too wide. And I think I'm losing like 1/4 inch there. So all these measurements I've been taking on this, and I'm coming out with parts that are built a little different, you know. This is the old pan. You see it was all rotted on the sides. I didn't want to mess with that, but you can see how small that flange was. It was really small flange. And also that door, the tail panel didn't come with these and didn't come with the holes for this. So those two little nubs got to come off because on the back of that tire well is a little latch mechanism. Kind of primitive. You just turn it like a gate latch, and it grabs those two nubs and holds it tight. And then there's a rubber that goes around this that keeps it from getting water in it. So all these measurements that I took, I did do a spread measurement on the sheet metal. That is correct. So as far as all that, those are a bunch of things you need to check before you go to welding. Because I basically think that I'm probably going to screw this whole back end together before I even touch it with a welder. I did the flange work and the repair on that floor to accommodate the new parts so that, you know, everything would sit nice and it would weld real nice. But in all, if I would have cut that out, I would have had a nice time trying to get that to fit back in that cavity. So I'm going to take this and get that the rest of the way off because they got really teeny welds. You can almost break them with a pair of vice grips. They come off real easy. So, but again, those measurements are there, but not on that wheel tub. It's too big and a little too tall, and it has really bad stamping on the floor to have that big of a gap. Now, once I roll that up a little, it might suck it in a little bit, but not as much as I need it. Because this is a two-piece welded panel, and not being in a jig, you can see where they ran the welds all the way around it. And, you know, because it's not in the jig, they're not going to get a square part. So if I take this clamp off right here, this thing takes off like this. Right now it's kind of under pressure because if you look in the back, it's trying to lift that corner up because I've got it pushed over as far as I can, but it matches right on the old lines. And you ask why I left the bottom end of the old pan on. Well, it was really good. And I have this thing right here, which is called a vacuum blaster. And basically it's a shop vac with a sandblaster in it. And it does real good. You can see how it cleans up stuff. I'd recommend it to be bought. I got it off Amazon and I filled it with silica sand and I run 175 pounds of pressure in it. And it just works real good. So that lip was able to be cleaned off and I wanted to use that as a centering point for this new pan. Well, I thought this new pan was going to look like the tail panel stamp and be a real stamp. Well, I could have fabricated that up myself. And, you know, it's a poor quality part in my eyes. And I'm trying to clean this car up so it can get a good lines and be a nice little car. And I mean, I'm fixing as much as the owner allows, basically. But you can see where we went in and did a little bit of work and made stuff strong again. We did the things for the back of the floor pan, and we also welded up the posts. These are all nice and hard now. We had to weld these metals back together that I don't know if they pop loose, because back in the day in '58, welding wasn't all that. And over here you can see where it had a little bit of rot going on. And I tried to tag some of them holes shut. And this is just marker, that's not a hole. But there was 4 holes there that I filled, and then we did the inside, and that gave me a hard structure. Now, of course, we're removing both of these, and we're removing this section here. And I did finally get those parts. This is kind of what they look like. The lower dog legs. We'll put those on there, and that'll make that whole section really nice and strong after I fix that. But right now the concern is on the rear end and getting a tail panel to fit and getting some kind of trunk line, because ultimately once it's all done and screwed over or screwed in, we got to turn it over and fit a trunk and make sure the trunk fits in it. And if all that becomes good, then we can weld it. And we'll take the tail panel back off, do all the plug welds from the inside. I like doing all my plug welds right down that lip on the inside. Same with the rest of it. We'll plug weld all the bottoms up, and then, you know, caulk all of this will get caulked. I'll pre-caulk this before I put the tail panel on the inside here, down in these gussets and stuff, and then I'll coat it with. I like to use that Rhino coat. That spray-on Rhino coat is really good for doing these kind of areas in a car, and we'll do that. And also those rockers will get Rhino coated. And then you'll just deal with a little bit of weld burn instead of a completely bare part, you know. But in all, that's where we kind of stand with this. And I was hoping to get another part that looked like this. This is a really nice part, even though they could have done a little bit better on the measurements, you know, as far as that lip. But if I got to cut it and roll it, I got tools that'll roll this. I can shrink this in half if I wanted to, and then just grind off with excess that I make, you know, because the lip will be bigger ultimately, but that's no big deal. But to go from that part, you know, to this is what we took off. Severely damaged part here. I wasn't going to deal with it, and he went and bought a new one, so we'll have everything right. We got everything squared in the trans tunnel area, and with the little pieces that we added to accommodate the floor. This is all done in 18 gauge. Any patch work I do on these cars is usually done in 18 gauge. It's a little harder to work with, but it welds real nice. And you know, if you're a welder, when you're welding new steel onto old steel, and you got a good thick old steel, and you know how to push weld, and push welding is starting your arc on the side of the good steel. So when you push weld, you start your arc over here and push it. And it doesn't put a lot of stress on the part that's wore, because ultimately you see these lines all the way around. that's making it more brittle. And when it's an old part of steel, this here actually got weakened by this heat going down the side of it. So it's a fine line of how to weld, but you know, it's the best you can do when you're putting new steel to old steel. And you know, I sandblasted it all out and cleaned it up before I welded it, so it came out pretty good. I like to get thick welds on this kind of stuff because once I grind them down, I like a fat area being exposed instead of like a thin line. A lot of people like to lay thin lines on this, and I just don't. I like it the other way. But regardless, that's where we're at with the tail panel. And like I said, there's a few things I wanted to just share with you if you're doing this on your own and you've never done it before. I go part by part and I kind of inspect everything that I do. I don't know if I'm just picky or if it's just because I don't like to do it twice. And once you weld something, it's not easy to get back off. So I like to make sure everything fits prior to welding anything or doing any kind of modifications. You do this, I really see me having to redo this whole lip just to get it in that hole on that other part. Now the bottom fits good down here. I marked where the piece goes. There's a little brace that goes in between them, which I can't put in until I get the part on. And I'm going to fabricate that up. It's just a little, you can see it's just a little thing that connects the two pieces and gives it a little bit of strength. But other than that, it came out pretty good as far as how far it is now. And the other parts were all nice and all the same size. All these black parts and this were exactly what I needed, and they fit real good. So anyways, I hope that helped you guys out a little bit. Probably a pretty long video I just made, but when you're in this kind of area and doing this kind of work, I really recommend that you do a lot of measurements. You check all the parts that you got and pre-fit before you weld. It doesn't hurt to shoot a screw on 4 corners to get a part to hang and, you know, get a fitment out of it. So until the next video, you know, smash that button and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll try to make more as I go. This car should come out really nice. We're going to do it all the way into primer, so we got a journey. Have a good day.